Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Unbiased Truth with your host Branson. Now I'm here to talk about the new rules that Trump has put in the game in the face of AI. And now recently, Trump has recently posted on X that the federal administration is about to ban all state regulation of AI building and construction of it and handling of it across the United States. And I think this changes the game a little bit. This has been a long time coming. They've been talking about this for months and everything, but now it's going to finally be put into effect. And I think this is meant for multi different purposes. Like as we just saw with the Genesis program or Genesis Act, that Trump has decided to push forward AI and speed up its development in the face of the AI race that's happening globally, especially with China, Russia, and even the various competing AI forces here in America. And so I think he's putting a lot more funding into the development of AI and also getting rid of the regulations around it, to hopefully prepare it to succeed in the global front. But this also changes things because now you have less protections of it on an individual and societal level. Now we're going to see that, we already haven't had any AI protections in all these years. We've had 10 years since 2015 era to start doing it to prepare for the future, and we haven't done anything, which is amazingly nearsighted. But anyways, we'll get back to that in a second here. I just want to show you this clip of this episode that I was watching, Breaking Points, to get the point home.
We're able to have 50 states, many of them bad actors involved in the rules and the approval process. There can be no doubt about this. AI will be destroyed in its infancy. I will be doing a one rule executive order this week. You can't expect a company to get 50 approvals every time they want to do something. That will never work. And this is part of a huge campaign in Washington over the last couple days. Let me just zoom out and explain a little bit. So first of all, he had multiple attempts in the Congress to try and to put this AI preemption in the bill, multiple in the NDAA, which we're going to get to here in a little bit. That actually failed at every level. Individual congressmen and even Republicans who initially had tried to put that in were like, oh, we're getting a lot of constituent pushback on this. And there are actually a lot of red state governors called their delegation. They're like, hey, I don't want this, in the bill. So they push that away. The fact that they weren't able to
Of course, because the AI governors, the Republican governors, know they still have libertarian values aligning with that, and they don't want huge federal oversight on that level to impede their own protections of their local citizens. So that's why. That'd be like the federal government banning guns or anything. It's the state's rights, the state powers to defend it against federal infringement. So this relates to AI as well.
get it in the NDAA, an executive order is actually the worst thing for them because it means it, of course, can be rolled back and it can be challenged in the court system. So this is kind of a last-ditch effort by the AI companies going to the White House and making their case. You've had multiple visits. Christmas party season is always fun for watchers here in DC. The number of the big tech guys who've been at the White House over the last few days is crazy. Sergey was here just a couple of days ago. You had Greg.
There's been plenty of technocrat influence within this administration with Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and several others. Even the guy that was with Trump on the cryptocurrency that he claimed that he never remembered that he did his pardon for. He claimed he never knew him. Him is a currency thing, and several others that have been just close ties within the federal administration. And we've seen, that's why Trump has been really open with AI and developing and everything. Anyways, back to the point.
Brockman and OpenAI, you had Jensen, you had Sundar Pichai, you had every player Sam Altman, every major player has been at the White House in the last 10 days. This is their number one priority. And David Sachs, who's the White House AI czar, has kind of been the spearhead of this. Let's go and put this up here on the screen. This is his explanation, and he's, I guess, the father of the policy. He says, one rule book for AI. I want to share a few thoughts on AI presumption and address some of the concerns. First of all, this is not AI amnesty or AI moratorium. It's an attempt to settle a question of jurisdiction. When an AI model is developed in state A, trained in state B, inference in state C, delivered through the internet, that is clearly interstate commerce, exactly the type of economic activity the framers intended to reserve the federal government to regulate. In the absence of preemption, 50 different states will assert their jurisdiction, creating a patchwork of 50 different regulatory regimes. He says, for example, states like Colorado, California, and Illinois have made AI developers liable if their models contribute to algorithmic discrimination, which is defined as disparate impact. Colorado's list of protected groups includes English language proficiency, so presumably it's against the law for AI models to criticize illegal aliens. This is the type of ideological meddling of how we ended up with, quote, Black George Washington. So he's making a cultural argument here. He says only a federal.
And that really drives the point home that you need AI regulation, because it depends whoever's programming the AI, the artificial intelligence systems, that they can have enormous influence with the databases that they feed into it, into the algorithms. So that this obviously shows AI can either be super liberal or even super wacky and zany, like when Grok was posting some Mecha Hitler tweets that state that it has become Mecha Hitler, you know. So there's a huge umbrella when you're programming like a mind. It's almost like programming a newborn baby, you know, with its own thoughts, with your own ideologies and stuff.
Framework can achieve this goal. The attempts of red states to protect conservatives from bias and discrimination will have limited effectiveness when blue states like California have the most market power and a nexus to AI development. We can't afford any of this, so he says we will have preemption, but there will still be an application for child safety, for community, for creators, and for censorship. Now, the thing is, though, again, and this is actually kind of the problem, is that they're trying to do this through EO is the worst possible way. Because everything he said is not technically wrong to me. Like, I don't think he's wrong about the interstate commerce. I think that what he's talking about, communities, creator censorship, an executive order is the worst way to accomplish that. It's not actually the law. And it doesn't mean that we had a full-on debate.
Which is funny, you know, ironic considering that Trump was all against Obama issuing all of his executive orders, saying that proves that he was unpopular and didn't have enough support, you know, to work with Congress. Then here he goes issuing a flurry of them. You know, I'm not disagreeing with a lot of them. Some of them I actually like, but still, that's not going according to the system, you know, how the system works. But especially with AI, you need laws directed and created by Congress. You know, you can't just do an executive order for everything.
A democratic debate in the United States Congress.
Stop! Sorry, that was my cat. I don't know if you could hear him.
More
That's right.
to settle some rules around this, because they're not technically incorrect. Like, we should have federal standards in the same way that we do the internet or any of these things, like the Child Safety Act, right? What we should have is a very specific major debate in this country about these models, their effects, their liability, what, you know, guardrails that we're going to have in place. What can we all agree on? The suicide one it keeps me up at night, because how many people are using this as a mental health proxy? We have a loneliness crisis. You have 800 million people or whatever using ChatGPT. If just 1% of them are crazy, that's millions of people, and they're using this to assist them. You know, I'm not saying,
Especially with the mental health epidemic, you know, going on nowadays. AI and ChatGPT will just feed into people's delusions, which will further lead them to exacerbate the issue of your own, like, personal online bubbles, you know, your info bubbles. So there's that. So that's not good.
it's ChatGPT's fault, although, you know, it gets kind of sketchy whenever you live in countries where there's assisted suicide is legal, but they have no qualms. It's in the hands of Sam Altman. And that's why, ultimately, I actually would fall back on state regulation, because right now it's Wild West. And, like, that's actually, again, in the era of exponential growth. And that's everything they tell us is exponential.
Which is crazy, because we had so many years to prepare for this. They started talking about this back in 2015. It was right around the corner, and we haven't done anything. And there's actually a whole reason, is because the technocrats don't want there to be any laws. They really want, just like the old, the old companies that held monopolies back in the Gilded Age and stuff, you know, BlackRock, you know, Big Oil, you know what I mean, Standard Oil, all that, you know, JP Morgan. It was all, they didn't want any laws, of course, because it was infringing upon their economic success and their models. You know, they could have vast monopolies where they control the whole process and the production of the system, you know, the railways, the oil, everything, the banking systems. But They don't want any regulation, of course, and it's the same thing that's going on now. So that's just, that's just
It's getting better.
scary.
It's getting better. And in this time, we do not have time to dilly-dally. Like, the next time that a Congress could potentially solve this issue, or at least some issue, is what, 2029? Like, that's an eternity in AI math.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and in fact, we did have a Democratic debate, and that's why legislators realized,
right, not to
people
pass it.
do not
Great point.
want this.
Great
They
point.
don't want the federal government to preempt all of the states. They actually want the
Enormous
states
amount of power.
to be able to have some control here. And I mean, this is the
And who's really making the power grabs and the moves behind the scenes, right? All the technocrats buddying up with everybody, butting up with the administration on the local level, the federal level, everything. It's like, I don't really trust that. I don't really trust oligarchs, vast billionaires, like trying to purposely influence politics. At least with Elon, he already had a lot of money. I mean, they all have a lot of money, but Elon, it was a little different of a story, because at least he has some sort of, knowledge about the subject. He has some sort of values that align with it besides just seeking money, is what I mean to say. But other people, they really just have only everything to gain. So it's pretty scary, and they're like, oh, how to develop the new AI systems, and let me become the advisor for you.
good part of the laboratory of democracy. You have 50 different states. They can take different approaches. They can try to figure this thing out. Who among us?
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it.
Great.
Just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Has confidence that this government, which is 100% bought and compromised and shot through with these tech oligarchs, is going to do a good job regulating this extraordinarily existentially dangerous technology. Zero people should have confidence in that. The only people who like this direction are people, frankly, like David Sachs, who have a vested financial interest in pushing in this direction and having no regulation whatsoever.
Which is totally scary, guys, because we're dealing with a total existential threat. Something which has never been done before in the history of humanity. We're creating like an own artificial being, a mind inside a computer. And some people, such as the Peter Thiel types and these other weird technocrats that really kind of look down on the vast majority of humanity, they've even stated their ultimate goal is to create God inside a computer. God inside a computer. Would you believe that? I mean, would you trust that? No. What if you create Satan inside a computer? Or what if it's just God according to your agenda, So, it's crazy because we've seen all this already play on popular culture, with movies and the media, like Skynet and Terminator, all these different things. And we never learn. And you always think of the movies, oh yeah, how is it that we would just do that? How would humanity be so stupid to just have pride before the fall? And then there we go. It always happens because it's always a few elite that are in charge. They don't care about the rest of humanity. They'll be saving their own bunker or anything, and they're willing to push the needle beyond what is possible, which beyond what they can truly control. But yeah, anyways, to wrap it up, we're dealing with like a powder keg in our hands, a total existential threat, something we truly can't control, which we have to put the safety brakes on. But they don't want to. The administration doesn't want to, especially the technocrats, because they have so much to control and gain. Because, we're at this AI race with China and against the rest of the world. And, this will change everything, which I agree on. It'll change everything. We have an AI race. But I don't want to gamble that against the fate of humanity in the process. What kind of gamble is that? No, we have to take our time a little bit. And I've seen multiple different scenarios about us speeding in the race, the AI arms race, and then us putting the brakes on it slightly and adding more regulations and stuff where it's not the AI that's watching itself. And, we're still in the lead a little bit, but China closes the gap a little bit. But they don't want that. They're just doing full steam ahead. But hopefully, in the end, it's not full total steam to our own destruction. All right, well, thank you a lot, guys, and thanks for joining in for this special episode of Unbiased Truth with your host, Branson. Bye.